Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. My name is Laura Gentry. I'm president of Jazz Alive. And our vice president, Jim Anderson, is here also. And we would like to thank the University of Cincinnati CCM Jazz Studies Department for co-sponsoring this clinic with Carl Allen this afternoon. And a special thank you to Professor Craig Bailey and Rusty Burge and Scott Bell for working with me to pull this clinic together. So I know Carl probably doesn't want to be considered an elder.
Wait, no.
But he has a career that has depth and breadth that I'm hoping that you will glean everything you can from him in this clinic, and hopefully that it will inspire you and also propel you to continue as musicians in the jazz tradition. Please welcome Carl Allen.
Just to say hello. So I use that just as a basis or kind of a starting point, just really to kind of introduce myself and my conceptual approach to playing the instrument. And I will preface it by saying that in no way am I suggesting that this is how everyone should play. And I do think at some point in your growth and development, you should get to a point to where you have to ask yourself, how do you hear yourself representing on the instrument? That's very different from this is how the drum should be played. Right? Because it's a lot of different approaches to the instrument. But for me, I've always seen this instrument as a melodic instrument, which is very different from how most people see the instrument. We see it as a rhythmic instrument. Drummers, get a stick pack. You can get one for $10. It doesn't have to be all cute and fancy like this one that make you drool. But I will tell you why it's important, and then we'll get back to the other thing. I'll tell you why it's important, and this is my travel bag, which means I'm just on a clinic tour, so it's a relatively small bag. I leave for Europe next week where I'll take a bigger bag, which just pretty much has more of the same. But the reason that I have all of the rods and the mallets and the sticks is not just because I get them for free from Vader, but it's about being prepared to meet the music where it is, right? So let's assume that you plan a gig and you only have sticks and brushes, but the music is asking for something like this, or something like this, or something like this. You will find yourself imposing yourself on the music as opposed to meeting the music where it is. And as for a drummer, this is our toolkit, right? And I can't tell you, as crazy as it may sound, how many times I've gotten calls for record dates or movie soundtracks or other things because someone said they saw me doing a gig with these weird looking things I was playing, and they're referencing stuff like this. And they wanted that kind of sound on that particular project. If we take Now Is the Time. Quite often if I were to put up a lead sheet and I ask one of you guys to come up and play, it may sound something like this. Aside from the fact that it wasn't swinging, what can we do to make it feel more like music?
Put it on the toms.
Put it on
Make
the
it more
tom.
melodic.
Okay.
Do less.
Okay. All of those things could work.
More dynamics.
Yeah, more
Okay.
dynamic.
All right.
The bass drum.
So let's be, I have this thing about specificity is the basis for cooperation. So being specific is really important. And all of you all touched on some, and quite often, it's not just about what the rhythms you're playing. And it's not just about the dynamics, and all those are important, but it's the balance and the dynamics between the limbs. primary thing I change.
The accent.
What you played on the snare drum? Like it wasn't just the melody flat out on the snare drum. It was spread out along the drums.
Okay. Good observation. Anything else? Anyone else? Mr. Zeppelin?
Space.
Space?
And yeah, the way you were like balancing the volume of your snare to your ride was always on top.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And you were just
So-
like, yeah, just
okay.
kind of hitting the snare.
Yeah. No. Right? And the reason that you're not going to hear me sing it that way because I'm hoping to never play with someone who plays that way. So I'm trying to emulate the kind of elasticity in the phrasing and the articulation of of somebody who plays jazz music. So I'm trying to emulate stuff that I've heard, right? Any great jazz musician is a great thief. Now, I'm not saying you're going to 7-Eleven taking a Snickers, but we're going to steal stuff, right? All of the stuff that's been put out here via recordings, or live performance, whatever, it's out here on loan. It's out here for us to be able to take it and try to figure out how can we use it to increase our own vocabulary. Why stop?
I don't know. I feel like I'm messing up. I don't like this.
You don't like it?
I don't like being.
Today's your birthday, but you don't like it. So what happened?
I don't know. I just feel like I'm being judged hardcore right now.
It's called life.
It's good.
Right. So you okay. So we could have brought any number of you guys up, and maybe the same or similar thing would have happened, right? Because what's my intent is to take you outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So I knew when you played fours, you were comfortable, right? As soon as we throw something else in, because here's what happens. When we learn to play jazz, we get comfortable with 4 and 8 bar phrases. A lot of tunes are based on 4 and 8 bar phrases. But now, you got this crazy guy from New York coming in talking about 6s and 3s. We kept going. We would have been some 5s and 13s and stuff, right? So what we tend to do in that situation, to make ourselves comfortable, we take our 4-bar idea, and now we're trying to stretch it to 6. And we're trying to condense it to 3. The way you practice is going to reflect itself when you play. And so we have to practice those things that make us uncomfortable so that when we get in uncomfortable situations, we can be a little bit more comfortable. Does that make sense? Right? But what we tend to do, because music is therapeutic for us, we sit down and we play the stuff we already know what we can do. We go on a gig, and it's like, oh God, now what am I going to do? Because we haven't practiced those things that we are not comfortable with. So you have to practice those things. And it's not just you. You know, all of us, we have to practice those things. And my intent wasn't to embarrass you, but just to, you know, you're the one who had your stick bag and you got a nice sweater on today, so I figured I'd call you. So, but the point is that we all have to figure out what are those things that we're not comfortable with. Everybody should have a list of strengths and weaknesses. And part of the objective is for your playing to become balanced. And so the way it becomes balanced in part is to work more on the things that you're not comfortable with. Does that make sense? 2 great drummers, Kenny Washington, Rodney Green. They both played their tails off. But I'm not them. I had to find me. And so what do I have to do? I had to, first learn all of the stuff on the paper, which is not the music. That's just a piece of paper with lines, dots, letters, and numbers on it. But then I had to figure out, okay, how am I going to orchestrate that? How am I going to deal with the dynamics on this? How am I going to set this section up? Or how am I going to go about, you know, putting my own personal stamp on it? And sometimes it takes time to get to that. But every time I play, my goal and objective is to try to make that band leader so comfortable they can't even imagine anybody else playing their music. The thing that a lot of people don't realize, including the band leaders, when they send me music, I keep their music. Because there have been many times where I've gotten called for a gig, and 3 years later they say, hey man, we're going to record that music. Great. Can you make a rehearsal on such and such? Yeah. And I have that music. And so the night before, a couple of days before, I'm going through all that music again.
I get to the rehearsal, man, how did you remember all that? He just said, I don't know, man. I've been shedding it, right?